Hey, good morning, and welcome to this midweek conversation. Jerry is at camp this week, so my name's T. Hamilton. I'm here with you today, sitting in for Jerry. And then I've got three ladies with me today to help me talk about what happened during Worship Sunday. On my left, your right, I guess, would be Stacey Hamilton. She's my wife. This is Lisa Aker. She's our children's minister. And then Hadley Holland is our church ministry intern, and they graciously agreed to hang out with us this morning and to talk about what happened during worship and kind of lead into next week. So how was y'all's week? Good week so far?
Good week, yeah. I'm just coming back from taking a week off from work, so it was nice to be back on Sunday. I was gone for a while.
So you're energized and ready to go then?
I'm ready to go.
So what are you doing tonight?
Tonight is Nerf night, so we are going to have a bunch of youth here at church, and we are going to be having some Nerf games and food.
Nerf games. Hadley's taken and run with this whole thing, and she's got it all set up. The fun part is going to be the black light part, right?
Yes.
They've done painting and everything.
How to suspend them from the ceiling so that it can be the most exciting effect. So.
Well, good. Yeah, that's going to be fun. I'm excited about it. You've had a lot of kids up here helping you get it set up, and even some coming up in the next hour or so to help you set up and get ready for it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun. I'm excited about that. Excited about shooting kids with Nerf guns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's exactly how it's going to work. I won't get hit one time.
Yeah, we got our guns yesterday. We are prepared.
Stacey and I, we went to Walmart and got our guns yesterday, so we were ready to go. And Lisa, you're just getting back off a different type of week of being off.
I have.
Where were you?
I was at our annual Port A beach trip with
For
friends.
those of us who aren't as cool as you, that's Port Aransas.
Port Aransas,
okay.
yeah. We go every year with a group of 6 families, friends that we knew when we were in San Antonio, and so it's just a time to get together and catch up and let it all hang out, and so.
Well, good. Glad you're back, definitely, because you've got big stuff coming up, and not next week, but the next week after that. What do you got?
Got camp. Children's camp is coming up. We're got a good group of kids that are signed up to go. We're headed to Lake Brownwood Christian Retreat Center, and we'll be leaving on July 29th and get back on August 1st.
Is this your biggest group to go to camp?
I think it is.
I think it is. We were even talking the other day about how it's a bus and van type group, that we can't just do it with one deal, so it's exciting.
It is exciting. New trailer, we're got a big group.
It feels like camp, doesn't it? Good luck.
That it does.
That's a camp that Stacey and I go to, but we just work actually with the camp, and then Hadley's going with you as a sponsor this week, so she'll get to experience children's ministry from that side. And then Stacey, we leave this Sunday for a high school pilgrimage. What do you want to tell us about pilgrimage? What we do there?
Lots of hiking.
Hanging
out in God's creation with some high school students. It's a really fun time. I enjoy it.
It's very intentional to get kids out into creation, to experience God, to experience each other, and just spend time together. One of my favorite times of the year. I remember last year or the year before, you were on one of these challenges on your Fitbit and everything. Oh, yeah. And one of your teachers from school texted you and said, "And what camp are you at this week?" Because you were in a challenge, and she saw you had like 20,000 steps, and you responded that we were at Paladura Canyon or Big Bend 1, and that you basically blew them out of the water that week. So that's always fun for me. Personal goals of Stacey beating everybody in Fitbit challenges. So
the fact that it's like, high in the 80s, and it's not going to hurt matters.
We are going to Taos, New Mexico.
Nice.
We really camp out. We use tents and all that, and so it will be very pretty up there. And I'm sure we'll have lots of stories to tell people and to tell them about how much cooler it was there than it is here. It'll be different going from pilgrimage to children's camp.
Oh yes,
yes.
And y'all don't feel any sympathy for us at all, do you?
No, we've got one day in between.
Yeah, one day in between. So last Sunday, Jerry continued the series in Galatians, and he talked about several different areas about how that relates to our life. The first one that stuck out to me, probably intentionally because I bet it was in the outline, was how do we look at faith forward? This idea of setting goals for our spiritual life, and how do we do that? What are some things that we do? So I just wanted to ask y'all, what are some ways that you set goals, or maybe some goals, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, that you've set for this year? They're spiritual goals. Not that we're saying look at what we do, but it gives other people the opportunity to think about and change, or maybe to be creative with what they set for their goals. So Stace, what do you got?
Recently, I've been going through the Bible app and going through plans through that. So I like how you can invite your friends. So I'm doing one right now with Randa and my sister, and it kind of has that accountability with it. But we're going through conversations with God, and I've really enjoyed going through those lately.
That's been a good one for us in youth ministry also. The Bible app, it's the little brown U version of the Bible app. And it's like a social media account where you can friend people can follow you and become your friend on there. And then you can do a reading plan, and they're anywhere from 2 days to 21 days to a year long. And you can invite as many people as you want to that. But the best part is that every time someone reads there, it shows all your friends. So it's a push notification usually. And so that's a little bit of accountability there, because you're like, oh, Stacey's read the Bible, I need to also. But then there's places where you can actually put notes at the end of each day, and you can like put a blurb about what you got from that. We don't do it definitely every day doing that, but you can see what other people's thoughts are on the text. You can put your thoughts in there, and it's a real cool virtual community of Bible study together. So yeah, I got to be a part of that. That's fun. So Hadley, what you got?
Yeah, I enjoy the YouVersion app as well. But I feel like we've been doing that this summer in person, which I've enjoyed. So when I first came on at First Baptist, I remember that was one of kind of my list of things was to have spiritual goals and ways I wanted to grow this summer. And typically I don't think of goals with my faith because it is that line, as Jerry was talking about like grace and works and the law, and like how do you walk that, but also continue to grow. But it was really cool for me to sit down with you and think, like, where do I want to grow and what goals can we implement to make that happen? And so one of them is we're reading a book together over prayer, because I'd mentioned that I'd wanted to grow in prayer, and having that accountability of reading this book that has both like practical ways to pray and like different types of prayer, but also just like really fun things to talk about, theology of prayer. And with you, I've enjoyed that. Also trying to read through the Old Testament because I've never read through all of it. I'm in Joshua, so I've made it through what I think was like the
Leviticus.
really difficult part.
Well done.
Yeah, so I'm enjoying that as well. But the accountability helps with that so much because you can see what other people are doing.
Yeah, the book that you mentioned that we're going through is Richard Foster's book called Prayer. And for me, it has definitely opened up a lot of different types of prayer. I mean, there's 26 chapters of different types of prayer in there, and just going through those different ones, from simple prayer to sacramental prayer to all these different ways that we experience that in community and as individuals. So that's been good. Thanks. All right, Lisa, what you got?
Well, I've tried to just recently. I had a conversation with a friend about being more intentional in my prayer life. Like, I can say that I've been, my prayer life is steady, but like writing those prayer needs down, just seeing how God has worked, like, it's been a challenge. Like, I'll pray for someone, and then, life happens, and you might forget about those prayers that maybe haven't been answered yet. And so, anyway, just keeping a prayer journal and continuing to pray for different needs. And I was recently talking to another friend of mine this weekend, and it was a really good idea. And I was like, I'm going to start that. On her phone, she's put reminders that just like a notification that'll pop up. She's done it like one of my kids' birthdays is on April 23rd. So she would put a reminder at 4:23 that would just pop up and say, pray for Garrison. And so she's got at different times throughout the day notifications that are popping up, like, don't forget to pray for this person, don't forget to pray for that person. So anyway, I think I'm going to start implementing that. I like the idea, along with prayer journal. So
cool. Yeah, I think a lot of times we think of technology as distractions in our spiritual faith and development. We talk about it with students, with children, even with adults. I mean, you think about the number of times that we we lose track of what's happening even in worship because we have our technology with us. And so we think about that, but there's a lot of really good benefits that can help us with our faith and help us grow in that. You mentioned prayer journal. One of the big influences, at least in my life, was Robert telling the story, your husband telling the story of how he was leading a walk to Emmaus, and his friend Jeremy Dodd sent him a list of all the dates that he prayed for him specifically as he prepared to lead this walk. And I thought that was impactful. That's part of keeping a prayer journal. You can go back and see how you've done that. But then Donna Sanders, Grammy Sanders as we call her, there was a day that I walked in. I can't remember. She was maybe she was working for Operation Christmas Child at the back door. And I came in and something had happened in my life. I don't even remember what it was. Maybe someone was sick, or I just found out news, or whatever had happened. And I was telling her about it, and I said, yeah, so if you could just keep that in prayer. And she said, well, I can do that, but I've always found that the best way to keep it in prayer is to do it as soon as you hear about it. So, and she holds her hands out, and I grab her hands, and right there in the entryway to the office area, she's at the table, I'm standing there, she holds my hands, and she prays specifically for that need. And I was like, that's really good, because in ministry, you know this, we get calls all the time where we get questions, or someone will say, hey, will you pray for this? But it's easy to forget that as life goes on, like you say, but just stopping right then and praying for that is a huge thing. So moving on to the second part that Jerry mentioned, he talked about how we recognize what God's doing in our lives and what we can do for others. I kind of did it parenthetically as thankfulness for what Christ has done for us, what God has done for us, and then also how we recognize, how we share that with others, how we do ministry. And so what are the different ways that maybe we approach either one of those? And I'll give you a chance to think on that one. One of the things that I've actually learned over the last maybe 10, 11, 12 years, whatever, somewhere there, is this idea of thankfulness. And I've done really well with thankfulness of people in my life. So when Hadley comes on board, the first event she does, she led a glow night, and we come in and we kind of talk about it the next day. And I said, okay, well, here's your thank you cards. And so she had put the event together. So I tried to write thank you cards to those who help out with ministry, serve in ministry, but then also just things that happen during the week. Ellie Seaton came in one day and gave me a Michael Young bobblehead. Ellie Seaton is a second grader, maybe she's going into second, and they went to Rangers game. She got a bobblehead. She knows I have bobbleheads. She knows I love the Rangers, and she told Mom, I need to give this to Teak. And so rather than just saying thank you, everybody loves getting mail that's not bills, so I send that thank you card to her specifically. And kids really love that, especially little kids. So that's one of the things that I work on, that idea of ministry and thankfulness with others. But it's helped me become more cognizant of thankfulness in my own life, in my relationship with Christ. And I try to, even when I pray on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights with kids, to start with that, what we're thankful for, that we are children of God, that we did wake up this morning, the ways that God has blessed us, seen and unseen. And so that's helped me kind of look at those things and see those experiences, see those, even the little things, and be able to be thankful for them. I'm not great at it by any stretch of the imagination, but that's one of the ways that I kind of approach that in my life. And then I think that thankfulness spills out into others and helps you be more generous, which is a word we like to use with others. So what about y'all? Hadley, you got anything?
I've been working this year, and particularly this summer, of keeping a gratitude journal. And so every day, and lots of days, it's literally just like one sentence, but it has like completely transformed kind of the way that I reflect back on my day each night. And so I'll get my journal out and think of just like, what was one moment that really stuck out of all the others? There was like something I'm grateful for. So something small, like Teak brought kolaches to the office this morning. And so I'm grateful for that, and so I write that down in my journal. And then going back and reflecting on a tough day, what are some things that I've seen in this past week that have been things I've enjoyed? And so that thing, same with the prayer journal, if you can go back and look and be like, wow, this was a tough day, but there were so many good things earlier this week that I'm really grateful for. And it totally transforms kind of how I go through the day too, because then I'm looking for those moments when it's been a hard day. Okay, what do I see in this day that's been good, that I'm grateful for, that I can write about and reflect on later? So it's just kind of been really cool and transformative this summer to look at things through that lens.
That's a cool idea.
A good idea.
We have two twins in our church, and their family do a gratitude or a thankfulness pumpkin during Thanksgiving time, and they have a pumpkin on the table that every morning they get up and they write down what they're thankful for, and so that's a fun way to do that year round, to focus on that year round also, and then to even teach your family how to do that, to lead them in doing that. Cool. Lisa, Stacy, y'all got anything you want to add to that part of the conversation?
Sure. I think it was you that was saying writing thank you notes, and just recently we got a letter in the mail from Teak, and anyway, I know it was addressed to Robert, but he's the anyway. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's always something that we look forward to receiving. We love to get mail, but it's something that I've been convicted of doing more of myself, and I'm thankful,
Right.
but telling those people that I'm thankful is a whole nother story. So, and I don't know if that saying that said that I heard years ago that we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. And so I'm, I've got all these plans, all these things I want to do, but no one knows that unless I follow through. But so I need to do better about writing thank you notes as well. Another thing is just my life, everyone's lives are so busy, and so being intentional about those things that you do for others. We were going to have a group of people come over to the house and have dinner, with the neighborhood. There's several people in our neighborhood that go to church here. Some we know really well, some we don't know so well, and I don't know that they know each other. But I was like, what a great time. We could all get together as church family, but just kind of get together and have dinner together. But I mean, I had to get my calendar out, and it was like, oh no, June's not good, July's not good. Okay, I think there's one day in August that might work. And so anyway, but I mean, our lives are so busy, and if we're not intentional about making those plans about things that we're going to do for other people, right, then we just kind of get sucked into the busyness of life, and so and then we don't do those things, and so it's something I've had to work.
I know one of the places that I learned it first, I guess, was Beth Dinsmore. She's a member of our church. We were constantly getting letters in the mail from her. Just thank you, just out of nowhere, thank you notes about just saying we were special to her and things like that. And so that definitely influenced part of that. And her sister was the other one, Tula May, before she passed away. She called me one day up here at the office and said, Teak, I need you to come to the house. I was like, well, what's going on, Tula May? And I'll be as short as possible with this story. But she goes, I just need you to come over, and she hangs up. Well, I jump in my vehicle and I take off and I go over there, and I get there and open the door, or she opens the door and she says, come on in. And I smell the smell of cookies. She had made snickerdoodle cookies, and those are like my favorite cookie. Well, apparently I had said in passing in a hall one day that snickerdoodles were my favorite cookie. Well, before her husband passed away, that was his favorite cookie, and she said she hadn't made those cookies since he passed away, until she heard it was my favorite. And it was a regular basis that she would call me and get me to come over, and I would eat cookies, and she would tell tons of stories. I loved every bit of it. I told Stacy about it. She knew that I was going over there and having these amazing cookies and not bringing any home for her. But it was funny, because then the other ministers of the church, why are you going over to her house? And one day they went with me, and they ate almost all my cookies. So I was not nearly as thankful. But I can still remember getting cookies placed in my mailbox just from her trying to minister to us. And so I learned a lot there. So the last question is, and this just came out of thinking about the conversation with Jerry, what is like one book that's kind of influenced you overall in your faith? You can't say the Bible, because we hope that's one of them. What is that one book for you? Hadley?
Yeah, so admittedly, I have not read as many books as I would like to have, and a lot of them I read in high school and then just right at the beginning of college life. So I was thinking back to that time last night when you let us know kind of what we'd be talking about this morning. I went to my bookshelf and I was like, okay, which of you books is important? One of them I had lent to a youth, and I was like, okay, yeah, that one was good, but I'm not thinking of that one. So it was a Jen Hatmaker book, and it's called Interrupted, but it's like the expanded and revised version. I haven't read the other version, but it's a really thick book, and it has her husband comments on every chapter. I think that's why it's expanded, is he also includes kind of his take on what she says. But the subtitle is When Jesus Wrecks Your Comfortable Christianity. Mm. And it does do that. And I just was looking at it last night and thinking, I need to read this again because it's been about 2 years. And I was just kind of flipping through it, and I bought a used copy, and so someone had already highlighted a lot of the good stuff. And so I was like, oh, cool. So I can say what someone else thought was really important. But at the beginning, I was looking through last night, and she was going through the passage where Jesus is saying, if you love me, feed my sheep. And he asks, 3 times, and he's getting frustrated that Jesus is asking 3 times. And she said she kind of went through this same process herself with God. It ended up leading to their family planting a church in Austin. But she basically says at the end of this conversation with Jesus, he says, feed my people. If you love me, feed my people, because my people are starving and dying and they're being crushed, and you are blessing the blessed and serving the served and the saved. And I just really realized that is how I had been living Christian life, is going to church and working with church people, which is wonderful, and there's value in encouragement. But there's so much value in things like P3, where you see kids that live in your neighborhood that have never stepped foot in church and probably wouldn't. So yeah, I love that book, and I love what she has to say in that one. And also at the end of every chapter, she gives a list of books that influenced that chapter. Oh, so it's full of a lot of other resources I haven't looked into yet, which is why I need to read it again. But that was one for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good.
Lisa?
Probably my favorite book, and the one that's probably been most influential, it's a Lisa TerKeurst book, which I adore her.
I'm sure she'll be glad to know that when she sees that.
I love everything Lisa TerKeurst. But she's written a book called The Best Yes. Okay. And it's just kind of a book about learning to say no, learning to say no to your agenda, and so that you have time to say yes to God's. And so I think as a mom of 3 kids that at the time I read it, they were little bitty, and they were in elementary school, and you had PTO, and then there's church activities, and then there's community activities, and anyway, and as a good citizen, as a good school member, as a good church member, you're just like, yes, I'll say yes to all the things, and they might be good things, but if you are saying yes to everything, then it's like the enemy of the what is it, that saying? The enemy of the good is the enemy of the best is often the good, or something along that line. But anyway, so there's good things, but just learning when to say. Sometimes you just need to say no, and so that one was really good. And one of my favorite quotes from that book was when she said, like doing all the things. Okay, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it's doing all the things doesn't make me Wonder Woman. It makes me a worn out woman. And so anyway, just learning to scale back and knowing, just listening to God, what God really has planned for your life. And I'm a people pleaser, so wanting to say yes to all the things that people ask of me it's hard. Well, I want to say yes, but but that book's been good.
I'm glad you said yes and we're here today.
Me
Stacy.
too.
So I'm not so good at reading nonfiction books. That, like when you were asking about that, I was like, I've started a lot of nonfiction books, but for some reason, I never get through them all. So all that to say, I like fiction books, and I read a lot of fiction books. It's probably part of the teacher in me, even though I teach math. I still like to read all the little kids' books, and I like to read Christian fiction books and stuff. So one I thought about, I read probably several years ago by Karen Kingsbury called A Time to Dance. And I really liked that during the book, the different characters would have conversations with God and be praying. And it was cool to see both sides because you would hear God's answers through the book. Mm-hmm. And it was cool to remember that that's how prayer life should be, that it's not one-sided. And it's things that I knew, but when I actually saw it in this fictional book, like seeing how some characters would actually listen to what God was saying and how that kind of directed their path in the story. And then you saw other characters that completely like, this is what I need from you, but then would go on their own way and not listen to what God was telling them in the story. It was a good reminder, like, okay, I need to take the time to actually have a conversation with God and not just me like, this is what I need from you, and actually wait and listen. And it was also cool because it had a lot of, like they lived out by a lake in the north somewhere, I don't remember, it's been a while, but there were a lot of eagles. And it was just really cool, the connections of the story of how eagles live in their lifespan and stuff, and how it fit along with the stories of the faith that was building in the characters. And I was like, okay. So like from then on, I was like, I really love eagles. But just side note there.
And we talk about that a lot with students, the idea of taking time to stop and just listen to God. And that's definitely one of the hardest things to do. For me, we talk about Love Does a ton on this podcast, so I'm not going to go there today because everybody knows I already love Love Does. But for me, one of the influential ones was the book Night by Elie Wiesel. And it's his story of the Holocaust. And so there's a historic part of that, but it's a firsthand account. But it really made me think about why bad things happen in the world and begin to come up with like my own understanding of God and bad things and having good people and things like that. But then also how to deal or how to minister to people who are hurting. Now, definitely not in that extreme. I've never experienced that by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't want to come up with saying that. But it did make me rethink the things that we say at times of loss and hurt and grief, things I say, and reestablish in my life a better way of doing that. So that was one for me. We were forced to read it when I was in high school, I think, and then I read it again in a college class where we read all of his books. It was The Holocaust Through the Eyes of Elie Wiesel. And so that was one of the ones that I went with that just came to mind as we thought about this. So I appreciate y'all being here. I know it's a little bit longer than our normal podcast, but I'm excited that y'all were willing to do this. Next week, Jerry continues on in the book of Galatians. We talked about how that summer one, it's been broken up by P3, but we're definitely back in strong Galatians. And it won't be long before school's back in session. Jerry made me say that because of the teacher and Stacy. And she's really excited about that. She almost quit listening after the last podcast because he mentioned it so many times.
That's true.
So school's almost here. Just to let y'all know that. We hope to see you this Sunday at 10:30 a.m. at 213 East 3rd Street. If you can't be here, because we know it's a busy time of the year for everybody, you can follow us on any of our social media. You can follow us live stream, YouTube. We have it everywhere. So thanks for being here. See y'all Sunday.
All right, we'll be here.